Greetings and welcome to the channel. This is Mikhailov from Team Retro, where we like retro games and the devices that bring them to us. I've been using the Retroid Pocket 5 for about a week and a half, and I have to say, it's an impressive piece of engineering. This device is a clear upgrade to the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro in multiple ways, but there are other aspects of this handheld that also make it not as perfect as it seems. So in this video, we're going to put this device through its paces and find out if it's worth your hard-earned dollar bucks. So let's dive in and get to work. At time of recording, the Retroid Pocket 5 can purchase direct from Retroid's website for about $219. The unit I am using is a black unit purchased with my own funds. So it's time to hop onto our mount and ride in Spec Town. The Retroid Pocket 5 is powered by a Snapdragon 865 processor. The GPU is an Adreno 650. The device has 8GB of LPDDR4X RAM and 128GB of internal storage with expansion via microSD card slot. The screen is a 5.5-inch AMOLED screen with OCA lamination and a 1080p resolution. Giving the device life is a 5000 mAh battery. For connectivity, this handheld has Wi-Fi 6 built in as well as Bluetooth 5.1. The device ships with Android 13. Doing a quick unboxing, inside the device is the handheld, a USB-C cable, and a user manual. Now let's go ahead and do our device tour of the Retroid Pocket 5, and we're going to start the same place where we start in all of our reviews, with the bumpers and triggers. So these are analog triggers, and these are your typical clicky bumpers. So let's go ahead and do our sound test. And now let's just pretend we're playing a fighting game here. Not terrible. There's usually always some click. These are noisy. These are not as noisy as, say, the Amernic RG406H, which are extra noisy. So let's do a click comparison between these two. .406H is definitely the louder of the two. So I would say, yeah, typical clicky bumpers. There is no noise to the triggers, which is good. There's no squeaks, there's no crackles, there's no spring noises. And then at the top, there's not much else in the way of I/O here. You have just volume and power. Now, no fingerprint sensor or anything. This is probably more in line with something like the Odin 2 Mini. Obviously, very similar devices, D-pad centric, not D-pad centric, but you have very, very similar volume rocker and power buttons. Now, there is more I/O at the top for the Odin Mini. Odin Mini also has this very flat back, making it not quite as comfortable as picking up the Retroid Pocket 5, because the Retroid Pocket 5, in addition to feeling lighter, the plastic that they're using in the back is definitely nice and light, but you also have these ergonomic bumps back here that we're going to get to in a minute. So, given the choice between the two, it's very hard for me to decide which one of these two devices to pick up. I think if I were playing something a little bit more modern or doing some streaming, I would pick this for the joysticks. But if I just want to comfortably play an old game, this is really going to fit the bill here. This is a really very much has a lot of potential to be a good before bed device. And you'll also notice there's no I/O on the sides either. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to the front here. Let's go ahead and take a look at this D-pad. There's not a lot of sound there, but there is a definite click, but it feels like a good Retroid D-pad. If I take out the Retroid Pocket 5 sister device, the Retroid Pocket Mini, you'll see that they are fairly similar D-pads. There is some small changes to the design here, but overall, these two D-pads feel and sound very much the same. Same thing with the joysticks. These are the same joysticks on both of these devices. Both of these devices also have front-facing speakers, and they also have your standard ABXY button layout. Now, these buttons, if you remember from my Retroid Pocket Mini review, I had to actually trim the membranes down to make these less loud and more comfortable. So now, time to put the Retroid Pocket 5's buttons to the test. Let's do that sound test. So they're still loud. Let's just do a quick comparison here. Now keep in mind, I actually did the rubber membrane surgery on these. So these are going to sound a little less clicky, but these still sound, if you notice as I'm clicking, there is a little bit of a wobble to them, and there is no such wobble here. While they are noisy, they feel good. They don't have that same amount of issues with there being too much travel. The membranes here are definitely better designed, and these are much better to the touch than these buttons here. I kind of wish they kept this button design consistent between the two models like they did with everything else, but now that I've done that little membrane adjustment, which I don't recommend you do, I said that in my Retroid Pocket Mini review, I actually find that this handheld is now definitely better and more tolerable, but thankfully it doesn't look like I'm going to need to make such an adjustment here. And then, of course, you have your Android buttons here and your start and select. Again, I very much enjoy that start and select are up here, not just for hotkey purposes, but for just making it so much easier to reach for those buttons, either from here or here. In the Odin 2 Mini, they're down here. Not great. The 406H, down here, not great. Retroid Pocket Mini, up here, great. Again, that's just my personal opinion. I would rather reach up here for buttons than have to reach down here, especially if I'm setting hotkeys. At the bottom of the device, you have your SD card slot, you have 3.5mm headphone jack, and you have USB-C. And the back of the device, you've got a really sleek looking intake here. You've got these nice ergonomic bumps with some really nice matting here. And this plastic, the fairly nice plastic. It definitely feels like it can take some fingerprinting and maybe not smudge as much as other handhelds that I've had before. Let's do a couple of quick comparisons to other handhelds. Let's start with the Odin 2 Mini. The Mini has a mini LED screen as opposed to an AMOLED screen, but side by side they don't appear to be too different to the naked eye. However, the mini LED screen is going to have some issues with vignetting that I mentioned in my review of that device. The Odin 2 Mini is also more expensive at $319. The RP5's sister device, the Retroid Pocket Mini, is going to be much smaller with a 4x3-inch screen, but has the same internal Snapdragon processor. It's not that much cheaper either, coming in at about $199. If I had to choose, I would spend the extra $20 and get the RP5. Then there's this device's predecessor, the Retro Pocket 4 Pro. And at the same brightness level, you can already see the RP5 as a massive upgrade, at least on the screen. The RP4 Pro also comes in at $199 regular price, but the Dimensity chip in the RP4 Pro isn't as performant as the RP5. This makes the Retro Pocket 5 much more appealing unless you can grab the Retro Pocket 4 Pro on sale or pre-owned. For gameplay, I want it to be as thorough as possible so I could showcase the best experiences for this handheld as well as the struggles I had. Let's start with NES with the Contra test. And this D-pad seems rock solid. Diagonals need to be very deliberate, and this could be a very good thing, but also a bad thing when it comes to fighting games. Here is Street Fighter Alpha 3 for Game Boy Advance, and you could see here that while I'm mostly successful with combos, I'm struggling to perform dragon punches. Hadoukens and tornado kicks are fairly easy to pull off, though. This might not be the perfect D-pad for fighting games, but that doesn't mean it's a bad one. You might just need to get used to the stiffness of the D-pad in order for it to be truly effective. While we're on the topic of Game Boy Advance, I need to point out that this handheld and its 16:9 screen is absolutely gorgeous for this portable system. The AMOLED screen really makes this content pop, and it takes up a majority of the screen. Getting the black model makes it even better because any bezels you would have just kind of blend into the hardware of the device, and you don't even notice that it's not taking up the full screen. Nintendo DS is also a nice device to play because the RP5 is powerful enough to turn on the HD graphics, and you could fit both screens equally side by side. The same holds true for 3DS. Some games will play at a 2x resolution like Fantasy Life, and yet others like Monster Hunter Stories struggle even at a native resolution. Now let's move on to Switch emulation, which is very much a mixed bag, and I struggled quite a bit to get most games I tested to run. Switch emulation as a whole is very fragmented on Android, with several different forks attempting to make the rounds. I did most of my testing on the latest build of Sudachi with different Qualcomm and turnip drivers, and the results were hit or miss. The Switch version of House Flipper, for example, would either work or it wouldn't. Sometimes I would get into gameplay, but most of the time, things would just crash out. Sonic Superstars would also not make it past the title screen. Even this first party game, called Pink Blob Gets Lost, would suffer from low frame rate stutters, making the game just on the cusp of being unplayable. However, another game that I absolutely loved playing on the Retro Pocket 4 Pro still works very well here. I'm going to call this game Kid with a Wrench Goes to War. This game is a remaster of a Game Boy Advance title. I started playing this game on the Retro Pocket 4 Pro because it perfectly lends itself to D-pad centric gameplay, and it still fits right in here with the Retro Pocket 5, and I have no problems continuing my save on this device. Native Android gaming, unsurprisingly, proved to function very well, with most games adjusting themselves to the aspect ratio of the screen. The 16:9 aspect ratio works for a bunch of games that are meant to be run on phones. Specifically, Genshin Impact will work really well using the built-in key mapper. Wuthering Waves has built-in controller support and also runs very well on this device. The only caveat here is the joystick placement. I found, however, that it didn't really bother me as much as I thought it would, but it was also not as comfortable as a joystick-centric experience. Now let's wrap things up with my final thoughts. The device is very comfortable to hold, and the AMOLED screen is really beautiful, making me long for my Switch Lite OLED screen to come in. However, unlike the Switch Lite, any D-pad centric games feel very good and appropriate on this handheld. For $219, this is a pretty good package, and you could play and emulate a lot of games from a lot of systems. I think for this price point, this handheld will make a lot of people very happy. With that, there aren't a lot of negatives, but they do show the device is far from perfect. The D-pad might not necessarily be the best for fighting games. I struggled in Street Fighter, and granted, I know I'm not great at Street Fighter, but I felt enough resistance from this D-pad that I needed to point it out. Around this price point, there are other handhelds that could potentially do either a similar or a better job than the Retroid Pocket 5. For example, the Wi-Fi Razer Edge was on sale all of Black Friday and Cyber Monday for $212, and that handheld can run circles around the Retroid Pocket 5. However, on the other side of the argument, the Odin 2 Mini is about $100 more expensive, and then as prices go up from there, say with the Odin 2 Portal and the iNeo Pocket Evo, now you start getting into just buy a Steam Deck territory. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a device you are considering, and what do you think is the best use case for a device like this? And please feel free to continue the conversation about the retro handhelds and the Steam Machine Discords, where you can find me hanging out in between videos. And if you want to support the show like these wonderful people on the screen, you can do so by going to my Patreon page. Links for all these places are in the description. But that will do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you in any way. Every smash of that button helps the channel grow and allows me to get more content out to you. But until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.